start as well. We feel like we've been bringing you a lot of bad news this season, but I am delighted to announce we come to you today with good news because West Ham have just broken their record transfer fee by signing somebody who's actually a really good player, Geo. We have signed Lucas Paquetá. And as somebody said earlier on, if you're of a certain vintage, you'll know this song, Chaka Khan. And somebody said every time I say Paquetá, Paquetá, it's like the start to the Chaka Khan song. Maybe it'll catch on. It probably won't. Geo, this is great news.
Yeah, it's fantastic news. It feels like the missing piece of the jigsaw. It has that sort of, this is what we have been lacking. When you look at the team we've got, defensively, we're solid. We've got a new striker, got plenty of options out wide. Fullbacks, we've got enough of and stuff. But the centre midfield always felt like the issue. The creativity was the issue. We've seen it last season. We've seen it so far this season as well. So it feels like the final piece of the jigsaw. There might still be a little bit of business to do. I'd imagine if it is, it's a loan signing or just a little bit of squad depth. But this feels like the big one. And hopefully the one that just stitches it all together. A fantastic signing. I think it's a bit of a coup for West Ham, actually, especially when you add in Scamacca too. We've now signed two of, it doesn't matter if you've heard of them or not, or if you've ever seen them play, but we've signed two players that have a big reputation among European football as sort of the next big thing, or two players that could go on and become some of the better players in European football as well. Two players that perhaps wouldn't have looked out of place on the transfer shortlist for Manchester City or Liverpool or something, and that is massive for West Ham. It's not just us as well. Newcastle and Wolves have done some impressive business too. Statement signing from clubs outside the Sky Sports top six in the Premier League, and this is West Ham's, I would suggest, second statement signing this summer.
You said then, even if you haven't heard of them, and I understand that, but let's just assume, I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question here, sort of working on the assumption that people don't know. Because I say this because we played Olympic Lyonnais last season. When were you first aware of him? And at the point where we got linked to him, were you initially very, very excited about this? Were you impressed with what you saw last season?
Last summer was the first time I've ever seen him play. It was in a Brazil shirt. It wasn't even for Leon. I've barely seen him play for Leon. I've seen him play against Rangers in the group stage of Europa League, and he was all right. Seen him play against us again. First game was all right. Looked neat and tidy. That was it. It wasn't impressive. Second game, he was on the bench and came on. But by that time, I think we were well in control of the match. But last summer, when he played for Brazil in the Copa America, it was the first time I'd really seen him play. And then between then and now, I've only really seen him play against West Ham and Rangers, and that's about it, really. I'll confess, I've not seen him loads. I'm getting excited about other people that have seen him loads, getting excited. And it's a bit like the Scamacca thing, you know. I hadn't seen Scamacca play before, but I was aware that is sort of seen as Italy's future number 9. And I think you're allowed. We're football fans. We're not expected to have this extreme knowledge of players around European football. I expect Rob Newman to have that. That's his job. We are a football fan. I think you're allowed to get excited about people that you perhaps haven't seen before. I think, if anything, if you get told not to get excited about stuff like that, I think that's wrong. I don't like it. I think you should be allowed to enjoy yourself, allowed to get excited, allowed to want to see these new players come in and big players like this as well. So I was impressed with him for Brazil last summer. But like I said, in between for Lyon, not seen him too much. But I was a bit of a geek when it comes to football. I like my statistics, as you know. And I always say it's not the be-all and end-all statistics, but I do think it's important. And I do think it's sort of insights and clues, and it's how you interpret the data. And then you still need to go and do what you would call the eye test and whatnot. But his numbers are certainly extremely impressive. He ticks all the boxes in that regard. It's not even like they're good; they're strong. 98th percentile and stuff. It's big, big numbers. So
what does that mean? What does that mean?
When he's compared to other players in that position around the top 5 leagues in European football. So when you're comparing him to attacking midfielders, Paquetá, you're comparing his numbers to the likes of Mason Mount, Ziyech at Chelsea as well. Those Kevin De Bruyne for your attacking midfielders positions, and how does he stack up? So 98th percentile is essentially in the top 2% if you want to look at it like that. Huge numbers. So yeah, very, very excited. Looking forward to seeing what he can do at West Ham.
Well, I mean, we talk about stats, and I'll certainly get your opinion on this in a little while. In terms of the stats, the transfers we've already discussed on this channel, I think is extremely impressive what West Ham have done. I mean, things have changed a little bit since I did a video a couple of days ago, and I don't know by the time this video is published, possibly Manchester United will have spent big, arguably overspent on Anthony, but I think they've had a pretty horrendous transfer window. Not in terms of players coming in, they brought some good players in, but the way they've done business and the way they've overspent's been quite poor. But you would expect Manchester United to spend big. West Ham, it's very, very impressive what we've done. But I do want to just discuss a little bit. The one thing I noticed, and I've had a little look about it, a lot of players saying this isn't a David Moyes signing, and I understand that from the outset. There's a lot of people wondering how much influence Rob Newman has had on this signing as well. And again, totally understandable. And I guess we'll never know the answer. But in terms of it not being a David Moyes signing, David Moyes, aside from his Dogs of War team, which was to get Everton out of the relegation battle, we then started to build, if you'd ever call Everton under David Moyes Barcelona, but he brought in Mikel Arteta, and Mikel Arteta was a really flamboyant player. In fact, his Arsenal team now play very much in the image of how he played as a player. He brought in players like Pienaar. He brought in, it's not just those. So even someone like Leon Osman, I know he wasn't a particularly fantastic player, but he was a ball player, wasn't he? Played players that played on the deck. And also when he went to Man United, one of the first things he did was he spent big on Juan Mata. So he does like a ball player in the team. And I do think this guy is going to bring, we don't know what he's going to bring. We hope he's going to bring absolute excellence. But I do think he's there to be our sprinkle of magic. And when you look at the team and when you look at maybe a few of the deficiencies, and you also factor in what David Moyes has had to say about us needing something else, I think it's really great that we're making a move for this guy. I just hope there's not, I'd say, too much pressure on him. There's going to be pressure on him. I've heard a couple of people say, oh, he's going to be the next Payet. I think, whoa, it's going to be almost impossible. I think it's hard to say this as a West Ham fan, particularly bearing in mind I've seen Trevor Brooking play and, obviously at the end, albeit at the end of his career, and I've seen Di Canio play and stuff like that. So it's almost hard to say this, particularly bearing in mind the way he left. But Payet's about as good a player as I've ever seen at West Ham, and I think it's going to be very, very hard for anybody to come in and match that. But he doesn't have to be as good as that. I do want to get your opinion on the finances in just a second, Geo. Before I do, have you joined myself and Geo and a lot of other Hammers chatterers in our fantasy football game? If not, why not? I'll tell you the answer to that. You probably haven't downloaded the Spitch app, which you can do by using the link below. Spitch is the next generation of fantasy football. And I've got to give a bit of credit, or as you youngsters say, props. They probably don't say that anymore. It's probably out of fashion. To the person who was winning at the moment, led the last week, game week 4, Dandy Mond. Put my glasses on to read his team. He won this week. I beat Geo. Let's just get that in there. I had Harry Kane, the Hurricane, we'll call him, as my captain, but I only finished in 75th place. The person that won the Hammers Chat Mini League for this week, game week 4, is Dandy Mond. He had Harry Kane, Haaland, and Jesus up front. He had Kevin De Bruyne on his team and Van Dijk on his team. How did he have all those players in his team? He's gone over budget. That's what you're saying. I can hear you saying it now. It doesn't matter if you go over budget. Not on Spitch. You'll just start on deficit points, which hopefully I've probably popped up a little. I've probably covered Geo's face at the moment with Dandy Mond's team, sort of retrospectively. It's not just a Hammers Chat Mini League. It's so much more. Geo, what else could you do on Spitch, my friend?
Well, my favourite one is the free-to-play game. Classic free-to-play, and you do it week by week. So there's no transfers. You don't have to start an 11 and then only do one transfer in and out each week. You pick your 11. Next week, you can pick a completely different 11. Cash prizes up for grabs. Free-to-play games on there. Get it downloaded. Link in description.
Over 18, well, not over 18, 18 and over only, though, because there is money up for grabs and some big, big prizes. Talking for money up for grabs, there's money up for grabs at West Ham at the moment. I don't know, it's like someone's opened the vault to the bank, Geo. What's your reading on all this? Because I think it's a side story, but I think it's a big story. I just wonder when all the transfer deadline day has gone, it all calms down. People might look at it, oh, what? What have West Ham done? Why are West Ham up there? All right, Man United might finish top, but Chelsea might, whatever. Why are West Ham up there in the top 3 or 4 spenders?
We needed it, I guess. I think is the short answer. We needed an overhaul of the squad. I think overhaul can sometimes be one of these words. It depends how you interpret it. It's like when somebody says, "Oh, there's a massive transfer kitty." Well, what does that mean? Is it 50 million, 100 million? What is it's a very loose word to use. And I think overhaul is sometimes quite strong. Well, what's that? 5 players, 6 players, 7 players? I mean, we brought in big numbers, big money spent. And it probably applies the pressure to David Moyes a little bit, because I think since he's returned, nearly 3 years ago now, so he's nearly been here 3 calendar years since he returned. He's never spent huge money. We've brought in some big signings like Kurt Zouma, but we've never gone above and beyond. And if anything, we've looked like we've not spent as much as we should. Obviously, back in January, we made no signings, sold Sebastian Haller. The replacement was a £1.5 million loan fee for Jesse Lingard. So in some windows, we've shortchanged the team, if you like. So that's, I think, has actually benefited Moyes a little bit, because it's always allowed West Ham to come across as the underdog, take the pressure off the manager, and probably given a bit of an excuse as to why, or if we were to not have a successful season, that's because we've not spent the money, we've not had the players, and we've only got one striker, right? Fine. Well, there's no excuses anymore, because you've been here 3 calendar years. That is enough time to do what you want to do. And now you look at the money he spent. Well, now he's definitely had enough money to do what he wants to do. So it probably applies the pressure a little bit, just like there's pressure on Arteta now. They are doing well at the minute, but he's had 2 massive summer spend ups to get here. So he's got to yield the results. Why we're spending it? I mean, there's 3 potential reasons. One, we've accumulated the money over the last few seasons, and we often got told, the money there, we don't want to spend it, we're going to save it. And I've always been, yeah, we'll see, because you always say this, the money never accumulates. The next window comes around, we still spend a realistic amount. Where was the money from the last one? Well, now perhaps we're seeing an accumulation of all that savings, if you like. Option B is Kretinsky's now getting involved and putting money into the club, which would be nice. And option C is we're spending in Declan Rice money before we sell Declan Rice next summer. But do you know something? I don't have a problem with that. It's the right way to do it. I think it's win-win. Either A, we're spending it now so we don't get our pants pulled down when we do sell him, or hopefully between now and next summer, we yield exceptional results and say to Declan, you don't need to go. Look, you don't need to go anywhere. You want a trophy? We just want a trophy. You want Champions League football? We might not have that, but we're heading in the right direction. You want flair? You've got one. You play next to a Brazilian guy. Next summer, hopefully, you could say, Declan, look, the spending ain't stopping here. We're going again next summer. Rob Newman's now got 12 months to find the next generation of signings at West Ham. Pressure's on Rob Newman now as well, because you imagine next summer, I doubt we're going to have this much money to spend. So he's really going to have to work with a much smaller budget, I imagine, next summer. So let's see what he does next year as well. So the reason for the spend up, I think that's the 3 possibilities. Why? I'm not 100% sure. We will find out in due course, I imagine.
You make some great points there, Geo, and none more so. And it's always nice to be next to a Brazilian, I find. Look, David Moyes could never complain now, I don't think. He really has been backed. And I don't think he got anywhere near this backing at Everton. I'm not saying I didn't back him, but actually in terms of a budget to spend, he spent more here than he spent at Man United. So
I better say, he didn't even get this at Man U. He wanted Tony Kroos, didn't get him. He's the one thing I will credit Moyes with in regards to this signing,
delivering vegetables.
in January, when we were going after players I felt were unrealistic, not just the Leeds ones, because they were never going to sell up, but when he was going after like Darwin Núñez and Luis Diaz, you thought, well, Luis Diaz, you were just never going to get to him. It felt like a waste of time to some extent. I think I would put Scamacca and Paquetá both in that bracket. Actually, I felt like it might have been a bit ambitious, a bit like the Mateus Núñez one. Went after him, and yes, we didn't get him, but he went to Wolves, so arguably we were right to go after him. He said, I don't want West Ham, and we know why he went to Wolves with the Jorge Mendes links there as well. So he's probably actually gone after players better than I expected him to, and we've got them to the club. Now, whether it's Moyes going after them or Rob Newman, whatever, West Ham United have gone after these players and got them in. And I don't know, maybe I read too much into when he does the podcast with Graham, or when he did a podcast with Hunter as well. I thought, you're listening to him, and I just think part of me is a little bit suspicious of what he's saying, perhaps not quite believing him. But this transfer, it's a massive transfer for West Ham and a coup for West Ham. But now it's sort of like, well, like I said, it increases the pressure a little bit. He's got to get a song out of Paquetá, otherwise it's, Moyes' own words, managers live or die by their signings. Well, you've got two massive ones here that's cost the club 90 million, nearly 100 million in total, should it work out, and we pay all the clauses. So you're going to have to yield results.
Absolutely. And just what I would say finally on that, I do believe that there's going to be such a buzz around the club, and not just us fans, that we can all do this. Myself and Geo can talk about it, and everyone piling on the comments, and hopefully we're all happy about it. But in terms of, I made this point in the build-up show, the preview to the Tottenham game, the buzz that there will be around the club will be immense. But I also think the players really need to see this. I think the players would be really pleased to see that we're linked. We're not linked, we're going to purchase somebody with as good a reputation as he has to actually pay the fee as well. And I just think that first training session will be a real buzz. We've got this guy coming in. He don't play for Brazil unless you're crap. I'll tell you now, I know people are going to post on the comments underneath, crap people that have played for Brazil. But you know what I mean. He really is. He's a top quality player. I think this will give everybody a major lift. And it's sort of a statement of intent, not so much to everybody else. I don't care about anybody else. Don't care how this looks to other people outside of West Ham. But I think it's a statement of intent to those within the club. And I think that is massively important. Anyway, good news, happy days. I'm absolutely buzzing. As there's a lot of us didn't think we'd be talking about something like this. You go back to it, and there was a worry at the start of the window. We were quite slow out the blocks, and are we going to get the players in? We have. I mean, whether the mixture of them is quite right, I guess we'll have to wait and see. We've got a good squad. You look at that bench now, you think, yes, I want that guy. Come on, Moyes, make a substitution. The bench is so good. I want him to start making subs after 10 minutes. It's fantastic. Geo, thank you very much, my friend.
Pleasure.
Don't forget to get downloading that Spitch app. Last few days before transfer window. The content is coming thick and fast. We'll catch up with you tomorrow.